Hello friends, how are you doing? Coming to you from Tulum still. We're still here for another 2 weeks. And today I thought I'd share with you a video on how to get through creative blocks, which I think is a topic that everyone that's been in the game sort of for a while will know. And you get to it to a certain point where, yeah, like, you want to make music, you have maybe the gear or your laptop, everything's there, you have time, but somehow it's not so easy to sit down and actually do it, or when you do, it's maybe not as inspiring and you don't get to the results that you want. So this is something that I think all of us have faced at some point, and I found some good ways to get through that. So while I'm here, I thought I'd share this with you because I don't really need a computer to show you this. So one thing that I found tremendously helps is to change the way you work and to do things that are really stupid and irrational. I find, at least my problem is that I tend to do things very logically a lot of the time, and I'll just work in the way that I've always worked. And this I discovered actually is another great gift from my youngest son, is that sometimes he comes to the studio and he just grabs my controllers and my everything that's up and just starts changing everything. You can imagine all the faders go up or down, and he mutes parts and erases parts, records over stuff. And the funny thing is, often the track gets better for it. And just watching him do this and realizing what happens to the sound made me realize, like, man, why am I doing all this stuff so rationally and logically all the time? Why don't I take the example from him to just go in and just be wild, just be creative and not be so mental about it and rational, but just experiment. So, do things you normally don't do. Take your whole mix and null it out to zero and start from scratch. Put some instruments way too loud and really crazy effects on them. Drop samples together that you would never use. Change the BPM, reduce it by half or double it. Quantize everything by triplets, whatever you can think of that's just stuff you would never do. Try it out. I guarantee you will find some really cool stuff. And otherwise, just see if you have a small kid in your vicinity that wants to help you, even some of the neighbors, some of you have kids, just let them go wild on your mix, and I promise you they will come up with really cool stuff. It's been a huge eye-opener for me. So that's tip number one, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, tip number one. The other one is listening to reference tracks, and I tend to do that at the beginning of a session. I usually have multiple reference tracks also loaded in my session. So just listening to other people's music, especially if it's music that's not super close to what you're producing, can be really inspiring. And some of the sound aesthetics behind it, or the way that it's sequenced, or the vibe of the vocal, or maybe the violins if it's classical music, I find it can just trigger ideas in me and kind of go down avenues that I just hadn't considered. And it somehow also, again, takes me out of my rational mind and kind of puts me in a space where I'm willing to try different things. At the very least, it'll reset my ears to a point that I remember again what I'm really aiming for in my mix, because most of the stuff that's released out there properly has got a balanced mix. So at the very least, it's a good thing to do, to make sure that your mixing is on point, and also it gives you a lot of input around the build-up of your sequence and things like that. So I can very much recommend that. The third, I think, would be to take regular breaks. I've myself done it where I've done 5, 8, 10 hour sessions in the studio of just non-stop going at it. And once you're in a flow and things are going in a really great direction and everything just kind of works, obviously, stay in that as long as you can afford to, without starving or people around you getting disappointed because you've been gone all day. Sometimes, our families, our partners, our friends, or whoever, they need us to be there also. So there's a balance in that. But if you can stay in the flow, obviously that's the best thing that can happen, and don't break that. That's actually a good tip. Don't break that for anything. That's not quite the right wording, but don't break it for unnecessary stuff like picking up your phone and, checking social media. So if you're in the flow, stay in the flow. Don't move away from it. But if things aren't really going, so I guess that was tip 2. If this would be tip 3, it would be, if things aren't really going anywhere, it's absolutely worth it to walk away from the studio, go for a walk, have a tea, make a coffee, have a snack, have a chat with someone, call someone. Just take your mind off the things you're trying to achieve and do some different stuff. very often when you come back with a refreshed mind and spirit, things start to flow again. So I think not finding flow and not making things that you really like is a sign maybe that maybe you're forcing it too much. I mean, I'll say I'm forcing it too much. It may apply to you also. Or that you're going about it in a sort of too rational, mental way rather than letting something bigger maybe flow through you that inspires you. So that would be tip 4, is it now? Tip 5, and this will be the last tip on this for creativity. And this is actually one of the best ones. So good you stuck around till the end. This one is about finding flow. And, it's this mystical, magical state that we all strive for, not just in music, but in anything creative and in normal work also. It can show itself even, in anything. So yes, very often I found that even though I may not in that moment be super inspired or super motivated to go to the studio, if I just go through it, if I just boot up the computer, sit down and open the last track or just make some sounds, start on something, very often in those very sort of unexpected sessions where you have like really no expectation and not a huge sort of feeling that something amazing is about to happen, if I start and I don't think about things too much and I just get on their way, very often within 5, 10, 15 minutes, I realize like, wow, this is really cool. Everything's working. The stuff I'm making I really like. It's going quick. Things are fitting together well. I'm not spending massive amounts of time on individual things, but it's all flowing from one thing to the next and coming together nicely. So actually just jumping into the studio and just trying stuff out quickly and seeing what it leads to regularly, ideally, I think every day if you can, to pursue your creativity every day is a great tip that I read in some book. Even if it's just sitting down for 5 minutes and not committing to doing a proper studio session of whatever, how many hours you consider that to be, but just saying to yourself, you know what, today I'm going to sit down, or every day of the week or the whole week, I'm going to sit down for at least 5 minutes in front of my gear, in front of my laptop, and I'm just going to start. I'm just going to try some stuff. And after 5 minutes, if I'm not feeling it, if I'm not happy to be there, if I realize I really am too tired, I'll move on and I'll, go watch TV, go read a book, or hang out with people, go for walks, sports, whatever it is that you normally do when you're not in the studio. So what that does is it convinces your brain kind of that there's no risk in you going to the studio, sitting there, even if you're tired, if you had a full work day, or if you're not really in the mood. But you just start and you know that, it's not happening, you're leaving again in 5 minutes. And very often I find those sessions actually lead to really cool stuff. And sometimes, they don't lead anywhere and I'm gone again after 5 or 10 minutes. But I know that I've tried it, and I would say, 70, 80% of the time they actually lead to really cool stuff. So it's a really good way to hack your brain, just trying stuff out and just seeing where it leads to. All right, so that was my 5 tips for getting through creative blocks related to music production in the studio. And let me share with you a little bit this really, really amazing place where I'm hanging out right now, which is here in Tulum. First time I've actually had a chance to properly walk down the beach. I know where I am now. This is actually a place that my missus wants to go to the whole time, so definitely something we need to check out. This is pretty cool. We've been here now for more than 2 weeks, but because we have a little son, it keeps us plenty busy and there's not that much time to run around and explore stuff. We're mostly, one of us is just jumping around with him in the sea or playing with sand. So, the zen state of mind of being a parent with small kids is also a really beautiful thing. So that's it from me today. I hope you're having a great time, whatever you're doing, whether it's in the studio or not. I hope you're well. And I'll catch you on the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.